Hi, I'm Ravi Gururaj, and I'm the chair of the NASSCOM Product Council and also help evangelize the 10,000 Startups program at NASSCOM. What NASSCOM is an industry body for the IT industry across India. The IT industry is now a $130 billion industry and made up of many world-class global giants that serve the IT industry across the world. And NASSCOM has realized the importance of early-stage entrepreneurship and the software product ecosystem. And those are the two initiatives that I help drive, to help grow, nurture, and to help evangelize those ecosystems. So India is a very unique ecosystem in the sense that it's both nascent and very old. Well, entrepreneurship runs in our blood, and at the same time, technology entrepreneurship is quite nascent still. And we're seeing a very big push and surge in interest in entrepreneurship across the landscape. We're seeing early stage startups form. We're seeing diaspora people return to India to get engaged. We're seeing corporates across India very interested in engaging with the innovation landscape and imbibing new and disruptive technologies into their mix. And we're seeing the government realize that they need to pay attention to both building products and to innovation in the technology landscape, both for India and to export again to the globe. So there's a huge set of opportunities. There's lots of demand. There's lots of passion, and there's lots of expertise. That's a great mix to put together, and I'm very excited to be working within that ecosystem. It is nascent, but high potential, lots of growth coming, and lots of passionate people involved. Well, it's dramatically different. 10 years ago, I started a company here, and I know exactly what it was like. The infrastructure was a lot worse. The kinds of communities you had that could support you were very meager. The talent you could get was very light. The kinds of experts you would have, both mentors on the technical side, the availability of venture capital, all of that was very dramatically different. Today, it's a much better ecosystem. It's a much more robust set of offerings that are available. The people involved are much more world-class at this point. The support system that's available, the infrastructure that's available, the risk capital that's available, the opportunities even in the domestic market are an order of magnitude different than 10 years ago. That said, it's still nascent relative to Silicon Valley, let's say. So just so I can help you calibrate, we still have a long ways to go before we can talk about it in the equivalence of a Silicon Valley ecosystem, but it has all the potential to get there. And a Silicon Valley of its own. It's never going to be exactly like Silicon Valley in California. It's going to be the Indian version of Silicon Valley. That's what we aspire to build here. I believe so. I think we've got all the right mix. We've got extreme levels of technical talent available. We've got a very entrepreneurial culture. We have a very open economy in some sense, right? We have a lot of passionate people involved. We have a big domestic market that could support startups once it develops for technology products. I think we have good educational institutions, which given the right amount of nurturing and the right amount of push and the right resourcing, could add to the mix in a very positive way. I think we've now got a government as well that recognizes entrepreneurship is right at the bleeding edge of development. It will infuse a sense of innovation, and it will help drive growth. So all of that is the right ingredients. Now we have to put that together and make sure we deliver as an ecosystem. So a lot of international companies, large Fortune 500 companies and the equivalent from around the world have operations in India where they're building products. They've got engineering centers of various kinds. They've got service centers of various kinds in India. They also view India as a market. And all these corporations are interested in engaging in India as a forefront towards building solutions and offerings for the emerging market. So they view India as potentially a petri dish in which they can experiment, where they can build new products, where they can do even reverse innovation, build products for an emerging market and take it to the global markets. I think what we see in India is the need for a product to be at a very low price point It has to be extremely efficient to learn, i.e. You might have skills gaps. The product has to be extremely usable. It has to be extremely resilient. It has to work in hardened environments. It has to work where there may not be power. It has to work in a form factor that is very rugged and hardened. So all of these are attributes that even in the West or advanced economies, consumers would want, I think. They would want a cheap product. They would want a product that's built well. They'd want a product that's very usable. They'd want a product that is extremely resilient. And so there's no reason why these products, once built for the Indian market, and could not then be exported to emerging markets and then back into advanced economies as well. So what all these companies are looking for is, how do we bring innovation in-house? How do I disrupt myself before I get disrupted by a force that is different than I have been planning for or expect on my normal roadmap? And can I do that in India in an environment that is new for me and where innovation is happening on a different, almost an out-of-box set of parameters, right? So we have seen lots of corporates from across the globe engage, from Japan, from Europe, from North America, come to us and say, we'd like to engage with your startup ecosystem. We'd like to understand how we can partner with startups, how we can maybe OEM some of their products, how we can license some of their products, how we can embed them, how we may even do M&A with them, and how we can invest and mentor them. Across the board, they're interested in any one of these models to understand where innovation is coming from next, to understand how they can bring in-house the bleeding edge of technology, how they can marry up hardware with software, with services, with big data and analytics, and maybe even things like IoT sensors and great new design. And that mix is what they're looking to do in setting up accelerators, in working with incubators, with working with early stage startups, bringing people in-house that are startups that they partner with. So there's lots of different models we've seen. We've seen lots of interest across the board, from manufacturing companies to media companies to pharmaceutical companies to banking and financial services, travel, you name it, every vertical is interested. I think, they view this as a place where they can engage with a very free hand, and they're looking to innovate here. I don't think there's any one right answer for that. I think some of the companies will choose to invest. The same company may choose to invest in many different routes to market here, or routes to ecosystem engagement, right? Google invests in programs that are very broad, base of the pyramid in some sense, right? They invest in educational evangelism, where they reach out to educational institutions. So does Microsoft, right? I think they engage in startup accelerators and nurturing startups. Google and Microsoft are both partners of the 10,000 Startups program, for instance, right? They also make investments in companies. I think Microsoft Ventures has made some investments. Google Ventures just made an investment in a company called Freshdesk. So they've made investments at the high level, right? And I don't believe they've yet acquired a pure Indian startup yet, but that could be the next step, right? There's nothing stopping them from doing that once they find something that's of interest. I think education is another one that's been quite active, where there have been a lot of areas where folks have built products that larger educational companies like, for instance, Pearson's have gone and acquired and started to expand that offering here in India. You'll find healthcare to be another area that is going through a lot of change. So you start to have e-health products, you start to have all kinds of wearables that have healthcare applications. You start to see it in medical devices, you start to see it in diagnostics of various kinds, analytics of various kinds, even DNA, genome sequencing and all of that's going on. So there's a lot of interesting things that pharma companies, that medical device companies, that even hospital chains would be interested in India. I think that's an area we're seeing a lot of interest. I think we'll see a lot of interest in retail at the back end. Cloud and analytics, not just the front end. You'll start to see areas where travel and hospitality are interested in things. Then I think BFSI and insurance, that whole sector will be also an area where we'll see a lot of improvement. And I think engineering services of various kinds, engineering product companies that want to see Internet of Things in the industrial cloud. That will be an area of lots of innovation, lots of interesting applications, and a lot of interesting startups that will start to get engaged over the coming years out of India. I'll tell you the two that I'll name. I think the two accelerators that have done very good job in Bangalore, at least. One is the Google 10,000 startups program that we put together, the warehouse, where Google and Microsoft are both sponsors. Google helped kick that off for us, and the Microsoft Ventures Accelerator, which has done very well. I think you've also got other corporate accelerators and like Target that I've already mentioned. Citrix is very active with its own accelerator program, though they run it remotely from Santa Clara. You also have Pitney Bowes in Pune that has started an accelerator. That's also a very interesting play. And then you have others like Chiron. You have T-Labs that are also doing a very good job of building accelerators that are more horizontal, general purpose. But they also engage with lots of corporates in a serious way. So I think it's a rich ecosystem. There's lots of players in play. I think it's still nascent, so I wouldn't want to call any final results on anybody. I'd say they're all trying to engage deeply with the ecosystem. They were all very committed to helping the ecosystem, and they're all learning with each batch what works and what doesn't, right? And so I expect we'll see very good outcomes from accelerators over the next few years, right? So I think clearly Bangalore is very dominant. That's a given. I think it's from it relates back to the fact that we have a lot of IT firms that have set up operations here, and a lot of talent has been here because of the services firms. But there are several other cities that are doing very well. Pune has very good startups that are in the product space, and even now growth stage companies. Delhi has a very good set of companies that are emerging over the last, especially 24 months or so. You have several in Mumbai, and Chennai is another hotspot. And more recently, Hyderabad has started to take off as well. You also have a nascent ecosystem in Kerala, in Startup Village in Cochin, and other places where I've seen earlier stage companies, but they're very eager to get it off the ground. And their government there has been very supportive. And so I think you're going to start to see several new hubs develop. I think Bangalore will continue to be a very concentrated hub for startups because of the nature of the clusters that are already here. But I think the world is truly flat now. You can start a startup from almost anywhere, and I think you'll start to see clusters form in other parts of the country, and that's our goal, to help. That's why I was in Kolkata yesterday, to help a cluster of startups get kicked off there. I think we'll be doing the same thing in other cities as well. So, about 10 years ago, I set up a company here, a startup. I kicked off a startup. I was employee number 0. I raised a seed round and an A round later from Bain Capital. And, setting up a company 10 years ago and today is a vast difference. I mean, we had much poorer infrastructure. There was less talent. There was a stigma about being in a startup. There were no real VCs I could pitch. There were no real corporate development deals. An accelerator was unheard of. Forget about it. And people didn't understand. You said angel, seed, startup. Those words would be incomprehensible to most people. The press was not paying attention. In fact, I was completely under the radar, even though I'd raised a Series A from Bain Capital and a seed round before that. Nobody was really interested in the story, right? And so we would stay under the radar forever, till literally the acquisition happened, 8 years later, right? So it was a much harder environment in which to start a startup. I had the same opportunity now with exactly the same resources, I would go much faster and probably go much bigger much earlier than I did then, right? And so I think the entrepreneurs here in Bangalore and in India have a very good opportunity to build excellent companies out of India. The environment is conducive. I think there's infrastructure that's available. There is both early stage capital from angels and investors, and I think there's an acceptance of startup as a mode of both employment and personal endeavor that has now become much more acceptable, right? And that changes the environment. Now, is everything perfect? No. Have we got a lot of growth to go? Yes. Is it still nascent? Yes. Is there huge potential? Absolutely. So, I'm very optimistic looking forward. And I think, in the last 10 years, we've seen a 10x improvement. I think in the next 10 years, you're going to see a 100x improvement. And India is going to land itself on the technology map like nobody can really predict. I mean, it's going to be a really wonderful future. I think, it's going to be an awesome place for Indian entrepreneurs to jump in.